Hello. My head. Yeah, I think my head's gonna be below. Let's explain it a little bit. There we go. This is going to be my first ever movie review I'm making to put on Facebook. Not Facebook. YouTube. And here's the story behind this movie. It's named The Genesis Code. I've got a family member who's nuts about the movie. He loves it so much. And can probably tell from my tone of voice, I don't. I'm giving this one as many thumbs down as the rating system allows. So for a few years now, I've known this family member loves this movie. I've known about it because he's mentioned it when we have little discussions and debates on Facebook about whether evolutionism is the true explanation for how things are here or not. Yeah, this family member is an example of somebody who's a Mormon who tries to hold on to the religion of evolutionism too. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense to me, except for maybe so he doesn't get made fun of, so he isn't bullied and name called. It wouldn't cost him his job. He's not a scientist. So we had another recent debate or discussion about it, and in this discussion he brought up the movie again, and I promised him, I promise you, I will watch that movie if I can find it. I found it. It's on Amazon Prime. It's free if you've already put the money out to get Amazon Prime. I don't know how much Amazon Prime costs. My wife takes care of that. But we definitely get enough use out of Amazon Prime to make it worth whatever money she's putting into it, as long as it's not hundreds or thousands of dollars that she's putting into Amazon Prime. Now, the movie was not %100% crap. So, let's give credit where credit is due. The actors did a good job of acting in this movie. When it was obvious from the context and the script that the character was supposed to be sad, the actors looked really sad. When they were supposed to be happy, they looked happy. There were tears coming down in the emotional moments of the movie. So, it was good on that level. It was 2.5 hours long. 2.5 hours that I'm not going to get back. 2.5 hours that I would have rather spent listening to my son talk about Harry Potter or Ninjago. 2.5 hours I would have rather spent watching Harry Potter with my son. 2.5 hours I could have spent watching Kent Hovind. One of these days I need to ask that family member what he thinks of Kent Hovind and creation science. Anyway, so here I wrote notes about what was wrong with the movie. Reptiles. Oh yes. These things are going to be out of order. I'm just going to take them in the order that my little tiny notes are here to remind me what I was thinking was wrong with the movie. When they are, at one point in the movie, they get the two main characters, the hockey star for the school, and another person who's a student at the school who is a journalist writing for the school newspaper, and they are put together because she's supposed to write an article about the hockey star. They get several physics students and a physics professor and a biology professor, I guess is what he is, and the main character's father, who is a preacher, a reverend, into one of the buildings where they are taught this theory that they call the Genesis Code, which they claim finally successfully merges together science and what the Bible says about the beginning of the earth. And as they go through how the days of creation don't mean days, they don't mean even time periods that are the same time period. They get to the day 4 or 5. The day where the fish and swarming things are made by God. It does not say reptiles. I fact-checked it. And King James Version does not say reptiles. If it says reptiles in any modern perversion or mistranslation, translation, modernized translation of the Bible, please let me know. Tell me about it in the description, in the comments section. It does not say reptiles. And so they did not successfully merge together science and what the Bible says. Do I sound agitated? Oh, I don't understand Christians, or Jews for that matter, because it's the same Genesis that we work with, Jews and Christians. And notice I did not say Islam. But it's the same Genesis we're working with, who try to make the revelations God said fit in with the latest thing scientists are saying, which might change. Scientists, the predominant scientific theories have changed a lot. Every several hundred years we got new theories, we got the more popular theory. Why try to smush revelation from God into those theories? Why can't you just say, okay, I know the scriptures are true, and this is what they say. And when you're in your classes at church talking about it, you say that, what the revelation is. When you're on Facebook, making private comments between you and those who are friends, I don't use Facebook to make a public following. If I don't remember who you are when you request my friendship on Facebook, I don't answer. What are your options there? It's accept or delete. I delete the request. But on Facebook, when you're having private conversations with your friends, comments for just your friends and family to see and not public comments for the whole world to see. Stick to what God has revealed. And then, if you have to, when you're in your science classroom on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, go ahead and spout off all the latest theories. But you don't need to merge the two together. And this movie tries to do that. Unsuccessfully, because like I pointed out, it does not say reptiles and fish were made in the same day. But the Reverend in the movie said they were made the same day. He was supposedly quoting the Bible. Let's see. There's one scene in the movie where they're in the science classroom and you see the teacher finishing his presentation to the class about the geologic column that does not exist anywhere in the world, and the student points out that the Christian student tries to make an argument that it's a lot like the intelligent design argument, but instead of being scientific and not naming the intelligence, scientifically we can't be certain about who or why. If you find a unbranded watch in the middle of the woods, you can't name the maker of the watch, but you can still be certain it had to have been made. Now, if you find like a branded thing out in the woods, and you know Rolex made it, you know Ford made it if it's a car out in the woods, but if you find some complex device that couldn't have happened naturally, and it's not a brand, it's brandless, you don't know who did it. Well, that's what the scientific evidence for the creation is. Who was the intelligence? I believe I know who, but it's not clear from scientific evidence. The animals that are designed that are inexplicable by any other explanation, they don't have made by the God of the Old Testament, the God of Isaac, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob written on it. So in a science classroom, I think it's inappropriate to do what this one student did and say something like, this Cambrian explosion, that's a lot of stuff happening that maybe that could be evidence of a God. Of God, not a God, of God. What she should have asked is, Professor, tell us how and why. She should have said something like, Professor, we are in a university classroom. We're not in 6th grade anymore. I want to know how they came to the conclusion about these dates. Where did they get the numbers for? Where did they get the numbers from? Or where did they get the numbers for these geologic ages? I want in-depth knowledge, not just the summary, but give me the depth, the details about how they came to that conclusion. That's what she should have done. And then you would find out that the ages of the geologic column, they're just made up out of thin air. Or out of Charles Lyell's hate for the Bible. But they are not based on, testing. They aren't, there's not good science behind the dates for the geologic column. Okay, the biology professor, you see him more than once because when they finally revealed that, with my tendency to wave hands, I should be careful about what's in studio with me. Fortunately, nothing broke there. But when they finally reveal the Genesis code so we can believe the Bible and believe science, which is a straw man. Okay, there's several lies that this movie espouses. It implies that somebody who takes the Bible literally is not believing science. It doesn't come right out and say that, but it implies that, definitely. That is a lie! That is a lie. Somebody who believes that God made the earth quickly and it's not billions of years old is not anti-science. You can love science and still see when scientists are guessing, when scientists are making up stories, when scientists are coming to a conclusion that is not the only plausible conclusion that the evidence could lead somebody to. But this one professor who was talking about the geologic column in the class, so he must be a professor of the life sciences, biology, or some historical life sciences like paleontology archaeology or evolutionary biology, he spouts a lie that people, when the Bible was written, believed the earth was flat. There's some good evidence that they did not believe the earth was flat. Now, with millions of people on the earth, I can't say every single person, but there were a lot of people in the past that knew that the earth was round. That's why Isaiah chapter 40 verse 22 says God sits on the circle of the earth. They realized it was a sphere, round, back then. His other lie was he calls himself out in one scene, different scene, he calls himself an theistic evolutionist. And then goes on to describe what he means by that. And says, well, I'm a theistic evolutionist. And he said several things. I didn't memorize his entire speech, but I watched this 2 days ago, so it's fresh in my mind. And I paid attention. And I rewound when my son distracted me with what I would have rather been listening to, which is him talking about Harry Potter. So he said something like, I believe in microevolution. Hello? That is a straw man argument. Of course, straw man means you're arguing against what somebody else does not believe or has not said. Which is an immoral thing to do and should not convince you. If you hear somebody using a straw man argument, you know they're full of crap, because if they really had good arguments, they wouldn't need to make up lies. Using straw man arguments is lying. That character in the show, which means the actor and or the scriptwriter, lied about billions of people. Microevolution is a scientific fact that virtually nobody is against. Christians believe it. However, that does not prove macroevolution. The two are extremely different. There is no Christian that says, I know for certain that dog that's coming out of that bitch that's pregnant is going to have the exact same color, the exact same fur length, the exact same fur texture, the exact same size in every way. Nobody says that because microevolution is a scientific fact that Christians, biblical literalist Christians, do not deny. Another example. Farmers, we believe, those who take the Bible literally, we believe that the cows that come out of cows, might be a little bit different. All the dogs in the world might have a common ancestor that was a dog, a canine. Well, the canines of the world, let's use that term. The scientific name for dogs, wolves, and coyotes is canine or candid. And then something else so you know which dog it is, which kind it is. So, canine. That is a scientific fact that you can see some variations, and they probably do have one common ancestor. All of the bears in the world probably do have one set of common ancestors that were bears. All the alligators in the world very likely have one common ancestor. That was an alligator. It was not a single-cell organism, and it was not a banana. It was an alligator. Let's take some deep breaths and calm myself down. Yeah, this is why you shouldn't watch this movie. It's full of crap. It lies about people. Now, those facts in no way at all prove that all the animals have a common ancestor that was a single-cell organism. That's microevolution, and that's not a scientific fact. That's a story some people tell. And some of them are scientists, but guess what? Scientists are allowed to have opinions and guesses and be wrong sometimes. If you don't believe that scientists can be wrong, then I invite you to have your friend bleed you the next time you get sick. That's what scientists did a few hundred years ago. They would literally bleed sick people. President George Washington might have lived a few more years if they wouldn't have bled him to death when they did. Maybe his body would have overcome his immune system, which is designed into his body. Maybe it would have overcome the thing that he was sick with. If the scientists of the day, using the best scientific knowledge that they had, hadn't bled him to death to get rid of his bad humors. If macroevolution were true, farmers would have to wonder if something was going to come out of their chicken eggs that wasn't a chicken, and then they would, have trouble selling it. But farmers know, even if it's a little bit different of a chicken, it's going to be a chicken coming out of the chicken egg. Okay. Symbiotic plants and animals. One thing that watching this movie did for me, since this movie was so bad, and this movie put down one of the characters in the movie, who is a smart guy, a physics student, so they leave the impression that he's smart, and most physics students probably are. But anyways, I have more respect now for the day age theory and people who believe the day age theory, since this movie that's so full of crap denounced them. Is this the day age theory? Somebody asked, or maybe he answered that question. I'm not remembering now if somebody from the audience asked it, or if the character brought it up on his own. He said, no, this is different than a day age theory. This is scientific! And the day age theory isn't, he's implying. But the physics students talked with a lot of certainty about some very theoretical things that have never been tested. Time moving differently. If somebody's like in the event horizon of a black hole, and at the moment of the Big Bang that nobody saw, so we can't be certain about it, the rate of expansion, the temperature of the singularity, the temperature of that little dot of all of the material and all of the universe is in a tiny little dot. So that was one downside to the movie. Physics people talking about, now physicists, they can get some things right, and some of these guesses might be right, but they can't be tested, or they haven't been tested. Like one of the theories was about if somebody is moving the speed of light, would they age or not? And the one guy's really certain if somebody gets in a spaceship that goes the speed of light, he will stop aging. And when he gets back to Earth, his friend and his brothers that were younger than him will have aged more and be older than him. But it's never been tested. Nobody has gone in a spaceship going speed of light. If I'm wrong about this, please put a link, not a link about somebody theorizing about it, not a link to somebody who successfully made a computer model. That just means the computer told him what he wanted it to. That's one risk of computer models. One thing that could happen with computer modeling, with scientific theory, is you'll just get what the person that made it wanted. Let's see, but the one weakness in the day age theory and this Genesis code is you were talking about hundreds of thousands of years or millions of years of plants that don't have any animals breathing carbon dioxide, which plants need. Hello? Remember your elementary school photosynthesis? That is solid science. That is true. That's proven. That's tested. And plants need carbon dioxide from somewhere. Right now in the world, plants get that carbon dioxide from animals and people and cars breathing out. And there are symbiotic relationships. Certain plants that need a certain insect to pollinate them because of the shape of the flower and the shape of the plant. I think there's some hummingbirds that fit that description too, or the flower is shaped just right for a certain hummingbird and it needs that hummingbird. How did those plants reproduce for millions of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years? It's implausible, without the insect or hummingbird that they need to reproduce, with which they have a symbiotic relationship. Alright, I've done a lot of shooting of guns. They had a scene at a shooting range that, if this was the only problem I had with the movie, I would say, hey, maybe it's worth watching. But, they violated basic gun safety and shooting range rules. Every shooting range I've been to, there's a sign, hearing protection required past this point. If you're renting a gun and the gun jams, the guy that works there puts on hearing protection before he goes through that door. These people were taking off their hearing protection inside of the shooting range. That's a big no-no as to gun safety. Now, if you're like in your own backyard, all these rules don't apply. You do whatever you want to in your own backyard. But most people don't have an indoor shooting range in their own house. And this was an indoor shooting range that they were shooting at. And at most, if not all, shooting ranges, you are supposed to load the gun at the firing line. There's a row of tables, benches, sometimes booths, so you don't get hit with your neighbor's brass, which hurts if it's not a low-powered gun. And it's very scary when you catch somebody else's hot brass in between your eyeglasses and your eyes. Yeah, I know about that from experience. But in the movie, they were loading the guns at the tables behind the firing line, which in real life, at a real shooting range, is where you're like supposed to put your gun case. You're supposed to walk up to the shooting range, to the shooting line, and take your gun out of its gun case and put it down there, and then go back to the tables. Not go back to the tables with the gun, load it up, and then carry it back. Okay, next page is what was wrong with it. Now here's one thing that was right about it. One of the main characters, he is the hockey player. His problem or difficulty with him believing in God is he's convinced at the start of the movie that the first chapter in Genesis is a made-up story and it's not true and it didn't really happen. And if you can't trust that, how the book starts, how can you trust the end of it? Yes, you people who think Genesis chapter 1 is a lie, and you can't trust it, but you can trust that we need Jesus Christ to sacrifice himself for us, you confuse me. Maybe you'll still get exalted with that mindset. So, endure to the end in believing in Jesus Christ. But for right now, while we're on this earth life, you're confusing me because you're not making any sense. If I tell you how to get somewhere, and at the end of it you've got a hefty walk, like, a wilderness area, Welcome Lake in Idaho, that's in a wilderness area, so you're going to have to get out and walk 10 miles when you've driven as far as you can. If you're starting out in California, and my instructions There's two parts of my instruction. The beginning gets you to the trailhead, and the end gives you the walking instructions. You start in California, you obey my instructions, and you end up in Florida. Are you going to trust me when you finally get to the correct trailhead about where you're supposed to walk to get to which trails and turns to make to get to the lake? I hope you wouldn't. The same thing for like a big amusement park or a big office building. If I tell you how to get to my favorite ride, Six Flags, and my instructions on how to get from California to the Six Flags in New Jersey, have you in Idaho and the instructions say you're done driving, you'd be crazy to believe when you finally find out how to get to Six Flags, you'd be crazy to believe my instructions about how to get to my favorite ride from there, from the parking lot. So I don't understand people who say, I can't trust that first chapter of the Bible. I can't trust it. But I can trust the last several parts of the Bible. Let's see. The Genesis Code theory is that God told Moses about the chapter 1 of Genesis, but it's useless until now when we have our modern physics. That's a very major insult against God. Just in case you don't realize or don't understand how that's an insult to God, let me break it down. So it's accusing God of telling us Genesis 1, which doesn't mean what it means until we get modern physicists to explain it. Which means he didn't give it to the people in a way that they could understand. It's worthless for a couple thousand years, closer to 3,000 years. Actually, a little bit more than 3,000 years. Moses wasn't he 1,200? No, 12 or 1,600. Moses 1,600, David 1,200, or moving to Egypt was 1,600, Moses 1,200. Okay, I'm approximately accurate on when Genesis was written. Okay, if you are telling somebody something in a way that they don't understand, you're either proving yourself to lack intelligence, because an intelligent person, an intelligent being, angel, God, person, talking parrot, can get the message across to you in a way you will understand. It's a lack of intelligence on your part. Or understanding. Maybe an intelligent person doesn't speak a certain language, so they can't speak in that language. But God can speak all languages. So it is a lack of intelligence on the part of somebody who can't communicate clearly to the person that they're talking to. So it's to say that this Genesis code, Genesis chapter 1, doesn't make sense until now, is an insult to God's intelligence, because it's accusing God of being too stupid to know Hebrew, to know how humans think, to get the message to us from our perspective, or it's insulting God's morality. It's immoral to lie to people. It's immoral to, if you could have communicated something clearly, not communicate it clearly. And this accuses God of one of those two things, either not being able to communicate it or not communicating it. Let's see. Arrogance, blasphemy, question mark, exclamation point. The one character in the one scene, the Reverend, to presume how somebody gets to God is arrogance or blasphemy. I don't see how believing that Genesis chapter 1 uh, is true insofar as it is translated correctly and it doesn't mean something completely different than what it says. I don't see how what that has to do with arrogance and blasphemy. It's this statements in this movie about the controversy about can we trust Genesis. But there's a big difference between no, that book means what it says, and now come on, start believing what the book says. There's a big difference between that and how did you begin to have faith in God? He doesn't talk to people like that. He doesn't answer prayers or send angels or give you an epiphany or whatever somebody might say. One of the characters sang a song about a soldier finding Jesus in a crib. That song was beautiful and well sung, and the only people that visited the crib that we read about in the Gospels are the shepherds. It does not prove that soldiers weren't there, but I can't get excited about that song that adds new characters to a complete story. There's one scene where the academic advisor for the main character, the Christian journalist student, she does double major, journalism and paleontology, goes to her father to encourage her to not be so vocal about her beliefs and to because she will have a better chance of having a long career if she's not vocal about long career in science if she's not vocal about her beliefs. And this is one scene where the Reverend did some good stuff. If you want to, I would recommend fast forwarding to this one scene, but I didn't take notes about how many minutes into the movie it was. But the Reverend, this is one good thing the Reverend did. So imagine I'm saying this back at the start where I'm saying what's good about the movie. The Reverend finds out that this, the Reverend asks basically, are there absolute truths? And the advisor says something like there are absolute scientific truths, but not absolute truths about morality. Then the Reverend finds out the academic advisor spent some time volunteering with a charity that fights female genital mutilation. And he's got her. She's got her. It was beautiful. And he says, you see, you are forcing something like, you're forcing your beliefs on those other people, but you just said there's no absolute moral truth. So if there's no absolute moral truth, then you should not be forcing your beliefs about whether female genital mutilation is good on these people. Got her. But he could have just asked her when she said there are no absolute truths. He could have just asked her, is that true? It's a self-defeating statement, there are no absolute truths, because you just made a statement or a claim about truth. If that statement is true, then it proved itself false because you just made a statement about absolute truth. Alright, my last note. So this Christian character accepts that there was no Adam and Eve, no tree of life, that those are metaphors, that the days of Genesis are just random periods of time and God didn't know, was too stupid or immoral to communicate clearly what a day was or how long it was. And she's willing to accept, as far as I can tell from when it comes up in the movie, she's willing to accept millions and billions of years. But her academic advisor tells her to put her beliefs on the shelf. What beliefs? She's accepting all the modern philosophies of men. I'm confused by that scene in the movie. What beliefs does she need to put back on the shelf when she's accepting billions of years that aren't in the Bible? Yes, I don't get it. I really don't get it. I'm confused about that. So that's my thoughts on the Genesis Code, which is a movie that you shouldn't watch because it's 2.5 hours of your life that you're not getting back. And I don't know if I'm going to watch any more movies that the family member recommends. I announced on Facebook that I'd watched it. I didn't get a thumbs up. Come on now. You were telling me to watch this movie. You're nuts about the movie. You should give me credit for watching it on Facebook with a thumbs up. And then in a comment. And I wasn't lying about what was in the movie. I could understand if I lied about what was in the movie. I wasn't lying about what was in the movie. I wasn't making comments about a different movie. Now they were. Alright, thank you for watching.